The silent revolution. How consciousness rewrites the self. Deep within the fabric of human existence lies a moment that arrives unannounced yet inevitable. When you catch your reflection and feel the jarring disconnect between expectation and reality. It's not the dramatic failure that stops you cold, but rather the subtle recognition that something essential has been quietly slipping away. This isn't about external circumstances going wrong. It's about the growing chasm between your authentic self and the person you've unconsciously constructed to navigate the world. This moment of reckoning, uncomfortable as it may be, marks the genesis of genuine transformation. But here's what most people miss. Real change doesn't begin with new gym memberships or career pivots. It starts as an invisible revolution in the landscape of consciousness itself. A fundamental rewiring of how you perceive reality, interpret experiences, and relate to your own potential. We've been conditioned to view change as something that happens to us, or something we force upon ourselves through willpower and determination. Yet the deepest transformations unfold like a quiet storm, reshaping the internal terrain through sustained attention, honest self-examination, and the courage to sit with uncertainty. This isn't about becoming someone entirely different. It's about excavating who you've always been beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and social programming. The architecture of awakening. Consider how a seed transforms into a tree. The process isn't visible from day to day, yet something profound occurs beneath the surface. Roots extend, nutrients flow, cellular structures reorganize, all preparing for the eventual breakthrough into sunlight. Human consciousness operates similarly. The most significant shifts happen in the invisible realm of thought patterns, belief systems, and neural pathways before manifesting as changed behavior or circumstances. Modern neuroscience has revealed something extraordinary about the brain's capacity for change. Every time you consciously choose a different response to a familiar trigger, microscopic changes occur in your neural networks. Synaptic connections strengthen along new pathways while old, automatic responses gradually weaken. This isn't metaphorical, it's measurable biological transformation happening at the cellular level. Yet here lies the paradox that stops most people in their tracks. The brain that created your current limitations is the same brain you're asking to transcend them. This creates an internal tension, a push and pull between the familiar and the unknown. Your nervous system, designed for survival, interprets change as potential threat. The ego, whose job is maintaining consistency, resists anything that challenges its established narrative about who you are and what's possible. This resistance isn't a character flaw, it's a protective mechanism. Understanding this changes everything about how you approach transformation. Instead of fighting the resistance, you begin to work with it, recognizing it as information about where the real work needs to happen. The identity paradox. Most transformation attempts fail because they focus on changing behavior while leaving identity untouched. You might force yourself to wake up earlier, eat differently, or think more positively. But if your core self-concept remains unchanged, the old patterns inevitably reassert themselves. The subconscious mind, like a sophisticated computer program, runs on the operating system of identity. Change the identity, and the behaviors naturally follow. But identity itself is more fluid than we typically recognize. It's not a fixed entity, but rather a collection of stories, beliefs, and interpretations that have been repeated so often they feel like absolute truth. The person who says "I'm bad with money" isn't describing an immutable characteristic. They're reinforcing a narrative that shapes their financial behavior. The moment they begin to say "I'm learning to manage money wisely," they've initiated an identity shift that opens new possibilities. This is why effective transformation often includes what psychologists call a liminal phase, a period of being between identities, where the old self is dissolving but the new self hasn't fully crystallized. It's uncomfortable precisely because it's unfamiliar. Your brain, accustomed to clear categories and predictable patterns, experiences this transition as chaos. Yet within this apparent disorder, profound reorganization is taking place. The emotional archaeology of change. One of the most overlooked aspects of transformation involves emotional intelligence, not just recognizing feelings, but understanding their deeper function as messengers from the unconscious mind. Anger might signal violated boundaries. Sadness could indicate unprocessed loss. Anxiety often points to the tension between old and emerging identities. These emotions aren't obstacles to overcome but data to interpret. When you learn to sit with difficult emotions rather than immediately trying to fix or escape them, something remarkable occurs. The charge begins to dissipate, the message becomes clear, and the energy that was trapped in resistance becomes available for growth. This is why mindfulness practices have proven so effective for facilitating lasting change. They create space between stimulus and response, allowing consciousness to observe rather than immediately react. The process resembles emotional archaeology. Layer by layer, you excavate beliefs and patterns that were formed in response to earlier experiences. A fear of speaking up might trace back to childhood experiences where authenticity felt dangerous. A tendency toward perfectionism might stem from early messages that love was conditional on performance. As these connections become conscious, their hold on your behavior begins to loosen. Environmental architecture and social ecology transformation doesn't happen in isolation. Your physical environment, social connections, and information diet all contribute to reinforcing or undermining the changes you're trying to make. If you're working to develop greater confidence but spend time in relationships where you feel diminished, your nervous system receives conflicting messages about who you're becoming. This is where environmental design becomes crucial. Creating spaces that reflect your emerging identity, seeking out conversations that nourish growth, consuming content that expands rather than contracts your sense of possibility. These seemingly small choices compound over time. Your brain is constantly scanning for evidence to confirm its existing beliefs. When you deliberately shift your environment to support new beliefs, you accelerate the rewiring process. The people in your life play a particularly significant role in this process. Some relationships will naturally evolve as you change, while others may resist your growth because it challenges their own comfort zones or reminds them of changes they're avoiding. This isn't necessarily anyone's fault, but it requires conscious navigation. Sometimes loving someone means accepting that you're growing in different directions. The neurobiology of becoming recent discoveries in neuroscience have shattered the old belief that the adult brain is fixed and unchangeable. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections throughout life, means you're literally capable of rewiring yourself at any age. Every new experience, repeated thought pattern, or emotional response creates physical changes in brain structure. This has profound implications for how we understand transformation. When you practice responding differently to stress, you're not just changing your behavior, you're strengthening neural pathways associated with calm and weakening those associated with reactivity. When you consistently challenge negative self-talk, you're reducing the brain's tendency to default to self-criticism. The more you embody the person you're becoming, the more your brain recognizes that identity as normal. Visualization and mental rehearsal take advantage of this neuroplasticity. When you vividly imagine yourself handling a situation with confidence, your brain activates many of the same regions as if you were actually experiencing it. This mental practice creates familiarity with the new behavior before you encounter the real situation, reducing resistance and increasing the likelihood of success. The rhythm of renewal, sustainable transformation follows natural rhythms rather than forced timelines. There are periods of intense growth and periods of integration, times when everything feels aligned, and times when confusion reigns. Understanding this cyclical nature prevents the discouragement that comes from expecting linear progress. The integration phases are particularly important. After a breakthrough or period of rapid change, your system needs time to stabilize the new patterns. This might look like a plateau, or even temporary regression, but it's actually consolidation happening at a deep level. Trying to force continuous progress during these phases often leads to burnout or abandonment of the growth process entirely. Many people describe transformation as feeling like they're becoming more themselves rather than becoming someone new. This points to something profound. Authentic change isn't about adding layers of improvement, but about removing the barriers that obscure your essential nature. It's less about building a better personality and more about dissolving the patterns that keep you from expressing your natural wisdom, creativity, and compassion. The practice of presence at its core. Transformation is about becoming present to what is, both internally and externally. Most suffering comes from resistance to reality as it is, while most growth comes from meeting reality with awareness and acceptance. This doesn't mean passive resignation, but rather clear-eyed engagement with what's actually happening versus what you wish were happening. Presence allows you to catch the subtle moments where choice is possible, the split second before you react defensively, the pause before you fall into an old pattern, the space between stimulus and response, where freedom lives. These micro moments of consciousness accumulate over time, gradually shifting your default mode from automatic reactivity to conscious responsiveness. This is why meditation, journaling, therapy, and other reflective practices are so powerful for facilitating change. They strengthen your capacity to observe your own mental processes without being completely identified with them. You begin to see thoughts as events in consciousness rather than absolute truths, emotions as temporary weather patterns rather than permanent conditions. The courage to be nobody. One of the most challenging aspects of transformation involves releasing attachments to who you thought you were supposed to be. This includes positive identities and achievements that have become sources of self-worth. The successful executive might need to let go of deriving identity from professional accomplishments. The helpful person might need to stop defining themselves through others' needs. This process can feel like dying, and in a psychological sense it is. The constructed self, with all its strategies for gaining approval and avoiding rejection, must be allowed to dissolve for something more authentic to emerge. This requires tremendous courage because it means stepping into the unknown without guarantees about who you'll become. Yet there's profound freedom in this dissolution. When you stop defending a particular image of yourself, energy that was tied up in maintenance and protection becomes available for creation and connection. You can respond to situations based on what's actually needed, rather than what preserves your self-concept. Paradoxically, releasing the need to be somebody allows you to become more fully yourself. Integration and embodiment. True transformation integrates multiple levels of being: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. It's not enough to have intellectual insights about what needs to change. Those insights must be felt in the body, processed emotionally, and expressed through action. This is why lasting change often happens slowly. All these levels need time to align and stabilize. The body, in particular, holds tremendous wisdom about transformation. Physical sensations often provide the first indication that something is shifting. A loosening in the chest might signal the release of old grief. A sense of groundedness might indicate growing confidence. Learning to attune to these somatic signals provides valuable feedback about the inner process. As transformation deepens, there's often a quality of effortlessness that emerges. Not because change becomes easy, but because it begins to feel natural. You're no longer forcing yourself to be different. You're simply being who you've become. This is the difference between willpower-driven change, which is exhausting and unsustainable, and consciousness-driven change, which feels like coming alive. The endless beginning. Perhaps the most important thing to understand about transformation is that it never really ends. Each level of growth reveals new possibilities for expansion. Every resolution creates space for deeper questions. This isn't a flaw in the process. It's the nature of consciousness itself, which is inherently creative and expansive. This understanding can be both humbling and liberating. Humbling because it means you never arrive at some final perfected version of yourself. Liberating because it means you can stop putting pressure on yourself to have everything figured out and instead embrace the ongoing adventure of becoming. The goal isn't to eliminate all problems or achieve some state of permanent happiness. It's to develop the capacity to meet whatever arises with greater awareness, compassion, and skillfulness. It's to live with increasing authenticity, allowing your unique gifts to express themselves more freely in the world. Living the questions. Transformation often begins with questions that don't have immediate answers. Who am I beyond my roles and achievements? What would I choose if I weren't afraid? How would I live if I trusted my own wisdom? These questions work on you over time, gradually shifting your perspective and opening new possibilities. The willingness to live with uncertainty, to not know exactly where you're heading while trusting the process of growth, is itself a profound transformation. Most people crave certainty and control, but real freedom comes from learning to dance with the unknown. This requires developing what Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron calls comfortable with groundlessness, the ability to remain open and responsive even when you can't predict outcomes. As you cultivate this capacity, you may notice that what once felt like problems begin to feel like adventures. Challenges become opportunities for growth, rather than evidence of failure. Uncertainty transforms from anxiety-provoking chaos into creative possibility. This shift in relationship to life's difficulties is perhaps the most practical fruit of genuine transformation. The ripple effect. One of the most beautiful aspects of personal transformation is how it naturally extends beyond the individual. As you become more authentic, present, and conscious, you give others permission to do the same. Your relationships deepen because you're able to show up more fully. Your work becomes more meaningful because it's aligned with your values. Your impact in the world grows because you're operating from a place of overflow rather than depletion. This isn't about becoming perfect or having all the answers. It's about becoming real, embracing both your strengths and limitations, your light and shadow, your clarity and confusion. When you stop trying to present a polished image and instead offer your authentic humanity, you create space for genuine connection and mutual growth. The transformation of consciousness is perhaps the most important work anyone can undertake, not just for personal fulfillment, but for the collective healing our world desperately needs. Every person who does the inner work of becoming conscious contributes to the broader awakening of human potential. In this sense, personal transformation is both deeply individual and inherently collective. The art of becoming ultimately, transformation is an art rather than a science. While we can understand the principles and processes involved, each person's journey unfolds in unique ways. What catalyzes change for one individual might have no effect on another. What feels like progress might sometimes look like regression. What appears to be an ending often turns out to be a beginning. This is why approaches to growth must be personalized and intuitive, rather than rigidly formulaic. You must become the artist of your own becoming, learning to sense what's needed at each stage of the journey. Sometimes that's challenge and action. Sometimes it's rest and reflection. Sometimes it's seeking support. Sometimes it's going within. The capacity to attune to your own rhythm and needs is itself a crucial aspect of transformation. It means trusting your inner wisdom, even when it contradicts external advice. It means honoring your unique path, even when others don't understand it. It means being gentle with yourself during difficult passages, while maintaining commitment to growth. As you continue on this journey of becoming, remember that consciousness itself is the greatest tool you possess. Everything else, techniques, practices, insights, are simply ways of sharpening and directing that fundamental capacity for awareness. The more willing you are to meet yourself and your experience with presence and compassion, the more naturally transformation unfolds. The path of conscious evolution is not about reaching some distant destination, but about fully inhabiting each moment of the journey. It's about discovering that you are both the sculptor and the sculpture, forever shaping yourself through the quality of attention you bring to life. In this recognition lies both the responsibility and the profound freedom of being human.